This is your Introduction to Maps, Part 2, continued. I want you to turn in your textbook to page H18. Take a look at the picture. What do you notice on the map? Do you see anything, any lines in the ocean? What are these lines called? Think for a minute. If you were thinking latitude and longitude lines, you're correct. Are these lines really visible on Earth? Can we see them wherever we go? Am I going to be walking down the street and trip over a line of longitude? No. They're invisible lines. But they're all over the Earth, and they basically work like a coordinate graph. As you can see on page 18, they're intersecting lines that help us find any location on Earth. I want you to turn now to page H14 in your book. Let's read about latitude and longitude together on this page. All right, now that we've read about lines of latitude, we've learned that these are east-west lines in the grid, and they're also called parallels because they always run parallel to each other. A handy trick I always use to remember latitude, I always think latitude, flatitude. Those are the flat lines that run parallel across the globe. Let's stop and label a line of latitude on our big map now. You can see right here, this is a flat line, latitude, flatitude. I want you to go ahead and write the word latitude on this line now. All right, we've labeled latitude on our map. Now there's another type of line. These up and down lines are called longitude. And we know that those are the north-south lines on the grid. And by that I mean they're the up and down lines. Long, like they're long lines. Go ahead and label the word longitude on this long line here so we remember that those lines are up and down or vertical. Now you might notice that the lines on your map look curved, but the lines on my screen are straight. Really, it's just simply too hard to make curved lines on my computer screen. So it's okay that your lines are curved. Just be very careful that you follow your finger down as we begin to label our latitude and longitude lines. All right, now there are some really famous lines of latitude and longitude. To figure out what those are, I want you to turn to the back of your book to the atlas. I believe this is page R2 in the back of your textbook. All right. On your atlas, I want you to find a famous line of latitude. Remember, latitude, flatitude. Think for yourself, study the map, and see if you can find this line now. If you said the equator, you're correct. I want everybody to find the equator and put your finger on it now. You can see that the equator basically divides the world in half. It divides the world from the northern half of the world to the southern half of the world. And the equator is labeled 0 degrees because it's right there in the middle. All right, now I want you to put your finger on the equator, and we're going to, all of us together at the same time, read the lines of latitude going above the equator together. If you move on up, we see this line is 20 degrees north. Say 20 degrees north. We move up, the next line is 40 degrees north. Say 40 degrees north. And then up here we have 60 degrees north. Okay, let's go back to the equator and let's count the lines going south of the equator. My first line on my atlas is 20 degrees south. Keep going, 40 degrees south, 60 degrees south. Very good. If you go back to your big world map, I want you to go ahead and label the equator on yours now. I prefer for you to label it over here on the left-hand side. Make sure you label it on the right line. It looks like it cuts right through this middle part of Africa and the top part of South America. It's also the second line up from the bottom. Go ahead and label the equator 0 degrees on your map now. Pay careful attention to make sure you label it on the right line. Okay. Hopefully you were holding your place. I want you to flip back to your atlas. And there is another famous line. This is a famous line of longitude. It's kind of like second place to the equator. It really doesn't get as much attention, but it is a famous line, and it divides the world up and down. In your textbook, it's really right here in the crease. Does anybody know the name of this famous line? If you were thinking prime meridian, you're correct. And just like the equator, it is labeled 0 degrees, but this time it divides the world into the western half and the eastern half. Let's go to our map now and label the prime meridian. Okay, here you can see on your big, whoops. All right, sorry about that. Go ahead and label the prime meridian now. It's 0 degrees right here. As you can see, it cuts up through this part of Africa and on up through Europe. Now, if you look back at your atlas, I want to read the lines that are going east and west of the prime meridian together, just like we did with the equator. So if I start in the middle with the prime meridian and I go to the left, I'm going west, I have 20 degrees west, 40 degrees west, 60 degrees west, 80 degrees west, 100 degrees west. And it repeats the same thing on the other side. This time it goes 20 degrees east, 40 degrees east, 60 degrees east, 80 degrees east. Now you might be thinking to yourself, where do these labels come from? How come it says 20 degrees west over here on this side? Basically, think of it like if you are dividing the world into quadrants. Okay, this line represents the equator. Everything north of the equator is labeled an N for north. All of these latitude lines are labeled an N for north because they're above the equator. All of the latitude lines below the equator are labeled with an S for south because they're below the equator. Now the lines that run up and down we know are called longitude lines. So the lines on this side of the prime meridian are labeled west because they're on the western half of the world. These up and down lines are on the eastern side of the world, so they are labeled east. So basically the world is divided into a big coordinate grid. Now, here's a little test. See if you can find 20 degrees, 100 degrees. Anybody having trouble? 20 degrees, 100 degrees? Obviously that won't work. I've got to be more specific. I need to use the directions. What if I say find 20 degrees north and 100 degrees west? Try finding this in your atlas now. All right, just like a coordinate grid, I'm going to make my lines intersect. Here is 20 degrees north. And if I find 100 degrees west, I'm going to start at the bottom. 100 degrees west. Sorry, I got off a little bit. All right, obviously this isn't as easy on a computer. Let's try again. 100 degrees west. Let's try it one more time. 100 degrees west. There we go. And I end up right here in Mexico City. Having the coordinates 20 degrees north, latitude line, and 100 degrees west, longitude line, put me right here in Mexico City with just a little mess up from the computer. Okay, now let's go ahead and go back to your big world map and let's get all of these longitude and latitude lines labeled. You might want to start with your longitude lines. You've already labeled the equator. So your first line directly above the equator is 20 degrees north. Then we're skipping, we're going to 40 degrees north. We're going to 60 degrees north. What am I skip counting by? Yes, you can obviously see I'm skip counting by 20s. Then right below the equator will be 20 degrees south because we're below the equator, so we're labeling it south. Do the same thing with the prime meridian. Go back and find your prime meridian and label the eastern lines of longitude and the western lines of longitude. Except you'll notice this time we're skip counting by 40s across the bottom. Go ahead and label these now. Hopefully when you labeled your longitude line, you labeled it long ways to remember that longitude lines go up and down and your latitude lines are flat. Let's check for accuracy. On your latitude lines, the very line at the very top should be labeled 60 degrees north, and your lowest latitude line should be labeled 20 degrees south. If you've messed up somewhere, you might need to do some erasing. That's why we always write in pencil. If you're checking your longitude lines, the furthest line to the left is 140 degrees west, and the furthest longitude line to the right is 140 degrees east. Double check your labels now. All right, now we're ready for the part where you are really working independently. You can see that I've given you the key, and I've color-coded all of our ancient civilizations across the bottom. And we've done the Aztec together already. But now you can go ahead and color code the rest of the civilizations. Remember, you can choose whatever colors you like, but it is very important that you don't use the same color. Make sure every civilization is noticeably a different color. I would recommend that you color each civilization one by one. So to start out coloring the Inca green down here in the timeline, then color the Inca up here on your map. Go back and pick a new civilization. Color the Maya yellow in your timeline if you choose, and then color the Maya up on your map. Don't forget the labels as well. We already talked about how labeling the civilization next to the color really helps the reader understand where that civilization is. So you're doing three things. You're coloring it in the bottom of the timeline, color it on the map, and label it on the map. You can now go ahead and color the rest of your civilizations. Please be very careful and go step by step. And you know, I forgot, why don't we go ahead and do Greece together since it's kind of difficult. You can see Greece right here is in green, and used some of the landforms around you to help you get your bearings. You see this little boot, that's Italy. And so I'll probably come around the room and help you, but if you would just go ahead and try and color Greece here, maybe even take your pencil and draw off the border, and then color it down in your legend, and color it up here on your map. That might help you get a start, because these civilizations in this area can be a little bit tricky, since the Roman Empire conquered a lot of territory. It's right, Egypt, this territory is right here kind of in the middle, so be very careful in this area of your map. All right, here's a few tips to help you on tonight's homework. One of your questions is going to ask you to find the name of a civilization that's heading southwest from a different civilization. Keep in mind, southwest doesn't just mean a straight line in the southwest direction. Southwest means anything in the southwest quadrant. So remember, it can be a whole area. So when you're using your big world map tonight for your homework, remember that southwest, anything southwest can be in a whole southwest quadrant. Hopefully that'll help. Remember, this video is posted to Moodle, so if you need to go back and rewatch any part of it or use it to go back and help you color your civilizations, you're free to do so.